anything I learn about how relationships work, one of my things is I absolutely like to walk my talk. And when, if I hear something and it's like, yeah, relationships don't work the way it seems on the surface, the first thing that I will ever do is live into that myself and see, is that true?
So our first guest sharing her really inspiring love story is Debra Simmons, Head of Happiness at Dare2BU. You're about to discover, if you haven't met Deb already, that she's wonderfully light-hearted and she deliberately plays and challenges herself. She describes the way she lives as getting her hands and her heart dirty in the clay of creation. And I wonder what insights you'll get into your own love life as you listen. Welcome, Debra.
I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, I really am excited for this. Thank you for being my first guest and for launching this Make Love for Life celebration. Yeah. And it's really important. It's really important for me because I think, as I'm sure you do too, that it's not just about making love for life, it's making life for love too. It's like, it's all about love. So we're here to talk about your experience of love in relationships initially. And I know you've had some really interesting experiences of
Yeah.
relationships. So shall we let's start from the beginning about what was your experience of love in relationships, or what was your experience of relationships to start with? Because I know that's really interesting and juicy.
Well, we could use the whole of our time just to describe that, but we won't. So I will squish it into quite small things. So um, basically, my experience of relationships were very much influenced, I think, by my deep insecurities around being good enough. So I ended up in a very abusive relationship. So my experience of love was abusive, coercive, manipulative, all, I could tell you some stories that would make your hair as curly as mine is. And if you're not watching this, if you're not seeing a picture on this, I've got incredibly curly hair. So yeah, my experience of love was definitely coming from a deep insecurity in me needing, I was looking for love outside of myself. I was looking for validation. I was looking, you had to make me feel good enough. And this wasn't just in my partner relationships, this was across the board. It was my friends and everything. It was kind of like, you make me feel a certain way, so you've got to do what I need you to do to make me feel good. So therefore, it starts with, I've got to do what I need to do to make you like me. So that was my experience for many, many years of what I don't know if I actually knew that, whether now looking back I can see that was how it was playing out at the time. I don't know whether I would have been able to articulate it in that way, but I can see that was what was underpinning all of my relationships across the board.
Right. Yeah. So that makes sense. So how did that look in terms of relationships? What sort of relationships were you experiencing as a result of that?
Abusive across the board, really. Even when I look back, I mean, I was married and I had 3 children, but even when I looked at it was a very, very unhealthy swing between, me being pushed around and abused, and me then every so often kind of um being aggressive to other people, because there was no balance in this. And even within my friendship relationships, it always felt like people were maybe taking advantage of me and all of this kind of stuff. And in my love partnership with my husband, that played out as very, very much do as you're told. It got ridiculous, our relationship. I couldn't go to the toilet on my own because he had to know where I was, what I was doing. It got worse and worse and worse, the unbalance in the whole thing. So
Wow. Right. Okay. And so what happened to make that change? What happened? How did you get out of that? How did that change? And how have you got to be where you are now?
Yeah, in a I'm in a very gorgeous, healthy relationship now. Um, well, it came to a head actually with my children. My youngest son, who now is 26, at the time he was 9, and he was the school were getting very concerned about his behavior, because this is the thing, however we are, it does spread out. These things have a knock-on effect in all sorts of things. And so something was flagged up at school with him, and my eldest daughter didn't live with us anymore. I sent her away to live with my sister because it wasn't safe to be at home. And my other daughter, I've got 2 daughters and a son, and my other daughter was threatening suicide, and we went to speak to a doctor. So it all kind of came to a head, and my son and my one daughter, we actually ended up in a women's refuge, and that was kind of what ended the relationship. So, and I was it was like, we're going to take your son away from you because we're concerned, unless you will leave the marital home. So I left.
Right. So okay, but so you put up with it for how many years?
Over 20.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, so that's really interesting for people to see that it's that we don't do, it's amazing what we put up with. Amazing what we put up with because of the thinking that we have and the thinking that we're listening to. Right.
Absolutely. Our level of understanding, what we see, what looks real to us, what looks, it looked impossible for me to leave, and it looked like I would be in a worse, in spite of everything that was going on, it looked to me like I'd be in a worse situation if I left than if I stayed.
Right.
So
Right. Which doesn't make
obviously
sense looking at it from this angle
make
now.
0 sense from where I am now, but that's what it looked
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. So it's important for people to know that they're not the only ones feeling like that, or
Absolutely not.
and they're not stupid, or there's not something
No,
wrong with them for doing that. That's just
no.
the way their thinking is at that time. Okay. So you had some things that prompted you to get out, and you got out to mainly to help your children rather than to help yourself.
Yeah, at the time, yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
Okay. And then how did that change for you to get to where you are now? Because things have changed so much.
Night and day. Night and day. Well, obviously, as I said, my son is now 26, and he was 9 at the time. So we are, I am a few years down the line since that time, and there's definitely been a lot of growth and change over those years. But what I'm noticing actually with clients and people I work with is how much quicker. It's a little bit like that person when nobody thought that a human being could run the whatever it was 4-minute mile, then someone
Yeah.
did it, and everybody can do it now. What I really see is this, you can do it much quicker than I did, but just bear in mind, I am a few years down the line. So one of the things that happened for me was at that when I found myself out of that relationship, I absolutely loathed, hated, despised myself for what I had done, what my children were going through, the mess I had made of everything that it appeared. And then I came across what everything that you're sharing here is based upon, the 3 principles. I came across that understanding quite by accident, and it was like something just hit me in the face. It was like, oh, because I thought I had permanently damaged my children. I thought there was something wrong, fundamentally wrong with me, because of everything, the problems I'd had and all that. I thought there was something wrong with me, and I thought, we actually had some counselling, me and the children, and I was told, and they were told, that the best that they could hope for was coping mechanisms. They've got PTSD and all sorts because of everything that they had been through, that the best they could hope for was that they would cope, and they would always have scars, they would always have baggage from what had happened. And what I saw when I came across the principles was that simply wasn't true. My children were not broken. I was not broken, and there was absolute hope for this to completely and utterly turn around. And what I really, really love and want to emphasize and share here is I have actually seen and know from personal experience that that is true. As I'm doing this interview, I have just been to lunch with my gorgeous son, and we've just had a beautiful conversation because I said I was coming back to talk about relationships. We ended up talking about relationships, and we have just had he's a gorgeous, gorgeous young man, and we've just had a really beautiful talk all about that. And so the hope that this offers for everybody, no matter what situation, if I can do this and turn this around through understanding what I understand, there is hope for absolutely everyone, no matter what their situation. So
yeah, and also that it's never too late, because
no,
even after all of that time, when it seems like, oh my goodness, well, and you were told it was too late, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
it wasn't, and okay. So for people who don't know anything about the three principles and what that is and so on, how did that change? What did you do? What did you do to change how you felt and how you experienced life? And
Well,
whoa, excuse me, 1 second. That was my dog sliding on the floor. Come here, come here, come here, come here, come here, come here. Oh, he's up. It's up on the bed. It's Lino on the floor here, and he was trying to get back up on the bed and he slid.
oops.
Yeah, now sit down. Right. Sorry. We'll go back.
No worries. Well, I heard in a talk, I was listening to something that was sharing. This was my first experience of the principles. No one had ever said any of these things to me, and I just heard that there is a spiritual side to me and to every human being. We are connected to the power behind life, and so there is a part of us that fundamentally cannot be damaged. And it was that somehow I knew that was true. It just hit up in something in me. It was like, yeah, I know that to be true. And I mean, initially, my children and a few of my friends thought I'd lost my mind, because I was kind of like, oh my gosh, we're okay, we're okay, we're okay. They were going, you do remember what happened? You do remember who you are and what happened? But then over time, I guess I knew that to be true. So then I I set out to, if you like, through experience, to test that for myself. And I
Right.
guess that's what my life has been ever since. That, all of the things that I find out about relationships. As I said, I'm in a beautiful, healthy relationship with a wonderful man now. And I've got my 3 children, who I've got 2 grandchildren, and, all sorts of things going on in my life. So all sorts of different relationships all over the place. And everything I learn about how relationships work, one of my things is I absolutely like to walk my talk. And when, if I hear something and it's like, yeah, relationships don't work the way it seems on the surface, try this. The first thing that I will ever do is live into that myself, and see, is that true? Can I experientially know for myself that that is true before I'm going to ever share that with someone else? And then when I share with someone else, it would absolutely be, look, I tried this, I had this experience, try it and see what your experience is. Because it is our own personal experiences. When we've had an experience of something, we can't unknow it then. It goes in. We can live into it. So it feels like playing the game, if you like, of doing that, and seeing what happens when we do something different to the way we've always done it, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it doesn't sound like you were, although you say doing things differently, you weren't specifically doing an exercise, or you weren't specifically doing something to change things. You were just, when you say you were doing things differently, what were you doing differently? Have you got an example of that?
Okay, so this is an example, maybe from a little bit. It wasn't initially. This was when I was in my relationship, when I was first in my relationship with my partner that I'm still with now. So by this time, I was actually running retreats, sharing what I had learned, and I'd been away for a weekend running a retreat. And my partner didn't live with me at that point, but he was staying at my house, so he was there. So when I finished the retreat and came back, and I was running the retreat on my own, so I finished that, came back, and he'd been in my house over the weekend. And on the Friday before I went to the retreat, I'd actually accidentally opened a cupboard, and something had dropped onto my hob and cracked the hob. And I was having some guests come to stay with us, which was why he was here, from the Monday. And so, and he does a bit of building, does that sort of thing. So we quickly rushed out and bought a new hob, and he was going to fit it when I was there, when I was away over the weekend. Anyway, I came back quite tired, having ran this retreat on my own, walked in the door, and the first thing I saw when I walked in the door was the hob still in the box there. And initially it was kind of like, anger, frustration, why hasn't he done it, blah 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 blah. And what I had seen is, right, you're doing something a different way now. You're not going to react to that thinking. That thinking it didn't feel nice. I was angry, frustrated, tired, no nice feeling there at all. And it was kind of telling me, he's lazy, he's useless, you shouldn't be with it. All of that kind of nonsense was sort of coming up. And what I had learned and what I was really seeing is, there's no good information when it's coming with that type of feeling. And I just run this retreat, so I was a little bit kind of, I thought, right, okay, don't do anything. So I just spoke to him to the best of my ability, as perfectly okay and everything, and carried on with the evening, and we went to bed. And when I woke up in the morning, I was in a totally different frame of mind, and I was actually curious. I was like, he's a good guy. What happened? Why didn't he? And not from a why didn't you do it, but genuinely from a why didn't you do that? And so from that frame of mind and that place, and it felt light, it felt good, it was nice, and so I just very gently sort of said to him, why didn't you do the hob? And we ended up having the most beautiful conversation, because it turned out he was feeling a little bit insecure about messing around with the electrics in my house, and thought, what if I do it wrong? What if I do this? He got into a whole ton of insecurity. And then he made up this story in his head that I was going to be angry with him when I came back, so he was just going to leave, and our relationship probably wasn't going to work out. He got in as we do.
Yeah,
He did this whole thing, and we ended up having this really beautiful conversation. We ended up feeling really, really close to each other, and really like disclosing some things about ourselves over this. And then between us, we did the hob while we were laughing and joking, and and it absolutely deepened our relationship. And that was a really beautiful moment of really seeing. I say to people, to the best of your ability, don't take action from that horrible feeling in you. Wait until the feeling has changed, if you possibly can.
right.
And it was a really great example of something really gorgeous that happened between us, that
Yeah,
strengthened and deepened our relationship. And that's what I mean about, I'm not going to be the person that I used to be. I'm going to do this differently.
right,
And
right. And that's useful. That's a really useful example of how you're going to do it differently, because it just reminded me of it was, yeah, when I was in the past, I was running a sexual and relationship therapy clinic in the NHS, and it wasn't getting it. Sometimes I would get really brilliant results. People would really see something very quickly, and it would change everything, and that would be great. And other times I would be doing exactly the same, what I'd been trained to do, and nothing would happen. And
Mm.
and I was also noticing that in my own life, I was not getting the results that I wanted, even with all this knowledge that I had. And so I had decided to train further in conventional psychotherapy. So to widen my, not just to sexual relationships, but to widen my training in psychotherapy. And as part of that, I had to go to therapy once a week. And I went every week for 2 years, and still, after 2 years, had not a clue what was wrong with, why my relationships had broken down, why my husband had left, why our marriage had been unhappy, and how I could be happy in another relationship. I still hadn't got a clue. It was like, okay. And also I noticed that still people who were coming to me for help with that were not getting any better results. The ones that did get good results got good results, and I had no idea why, and the ones that didn't, right? But while I was having that therapy, at some point she, my lovely therapist, lovely she was, she was getting me to see that I was not expressing my feelings, right? And at that time, I was teaching people, I was in my therapy practice I was teaching people that feelings were important, and you must take notice of your feelings. And but I was teaching them that you should take notice of sadness and anger and fear, because they meant something, and anger meant something, and you needed to look at what did it mean and do something about it, and so on. Anyway, this particular time, she was encouraging me to express my feelings, which would have been that when you went home that evening, you would have been expressing that anger, right? Which is basically what I did. So I was in this lovely relationship. I thought this guy was the one, and we were having a lovely time. And then he was late for a dinner I'd made. And I was feeling angry, just in the same way that you were expressing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was aware of angry feelings, and he should be here, and he's not. It means that he's not respecting me, and he's not valuing me, and not valuing my time, and all of this stuff, which was just building up and building up.
Yeah.
Over something ridiculous, So, and so when he arrived, I expressed it. Um,
Yes, and how well did that go?
I never saw him again.
No. Yeah.
This is, this is what I was being taught as a therapist to do, and as a client of a therapist to do. And I'm like, well, that didn't work then. So I packed in that therapy after that and looked for something else that didn't do that. But it wasn't until I came across the principles that I saw, well, actually, it wasn't until I understood that, no, those feelings, they do mean something. They mean you're looking in the wrong direction, right?
Yeah.
They mean
Yeah.
you're forgetting.
Expressing what you're feeling to somebody when you're angry is
It's
not
not the way to do it. No, that is not something else for a relationship. That's not to say you ignore the feeling.
It's not about ignoring it. It's about understanding. Like you say, it's understanding what your feeling is. And when feelings come with that, it's like the information that you're thinking. Like when I was feeling angry, it was kind of going, he's not the right person, he's this, he's not good, he should do this, he should be like this, he should change, da, 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 all this. And it's like seeing, when I calmed down, what I saw is, I know he's a really nice guy. I know that. And it's like, okay, so I am curious now about what happened, what was going on for him. And like you say, someone's late for a meal, and your head says they're disrespecting you, where have they been, have they seen someone else, and it's just telling you that thinking, even if it does turn out that something's going on, from that space there is no information that is going to be helpful there. Like when we calm down and we get curious, it opens up the ability for us to have a conversation, which is a whole different ball game. Or to even know, what I see now, this much further down the line, it's rare that I even have a conversation anymore. Once my feeling's good, it's kind of like, yeah, there's nothing here, nothing needs to be done. So yeah.
Yes, that certainly gets easier, doesn't it? And
Very
whereas
much.
in that situation where I did that, once I calmed down, I was still feeling bad because then I was blaming myself, right?
Yeah.
So I was still
Mhm.
listening to
Yeah.
more thinking that
Mm.
was not helpful. So just understanding how this works
How
and
what the system that we have been born into, it's understanding, like you say, our feelings are important, but it is important to know what information they're giving us,
yes,
because it tends to, when we're angry and we're feeling like this person has wronged us, it's, if we are feeling upset and angry, then we need to be suspicious about that, and kind of, because from a calm space, if we think, oh yeah, this person's actually not doing something that isn't great, that's a whole different ball game. And how you deal with that, what happens, what you do is completely different.
right, right, right. So so in your relationship now, do you have disagreements?
um that's a really well, let's put it this way, he's a man. We don't always see eye to eye about everything.
Mhm.
But what I really, really see, interestingly, because I knew I was doing this, it has, I've known that we're going to be having this conversation for a few days. And I was actually speaking to my niece Beck and kind of saying about that. And I said, I don't, me and Russ, we kind of don't really disagree. And we don't a lot, to be fair. And then she said, do you remember? And it was probably more than a year ago, and it was so significant that we'd actually had a bit of a disagreement. I'd actually suspected. So it's not, we don't always see eye to eye, we don't always see things the same, but we are very, very good at respecting each other. The times, I mean, that thing that we remembered, like, obviously that had become a little bit of a thing between us. It's like, oh, how do we get past this? But we are very, very good at respecting that we're different people, and Russ sees the world differently to the way that I see the world, and it's okay. I don't need him to see things my way for me to know that how I am seeing something is absolutely fine for me to see it that way, and it's fine for him to see it the way that he sees it. And if that means has a bearing on something we're going to do, then we'll have a discussion about that. But it doesn't have to be, we don't really argue, or particularly, we're good at speaking to each other, we're good at listening to each other. So
Right. So
mm,
so the other thing that that I find interesting about relationships is, and when I read some things about, oh, to make a relationship work, you have to do this and you have to do that. One of the things um, that I read in some places is that you have to, number one, you have to work on relationships. And number two, yeah, exactly. And number two, you have to compromise. You have to be ready to compromise. What do you think about compromising?
it certainly does not feel to me like when I hear the word compromising, I don't know, that it feels, ugh, ugh, squish me down, don't be me. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe that's not the how this is. um it doesn't feel to me like I compromise in my relationship. It feels to me like I unconditionally love Russ and allow him the space to be who he is, and there is plenty of space. The more I allow him space, the more space there is for both me and him. And it feels like we have more than enough space to be who we are, and that happens perfectly between us. And as I said, he's a big muscly bloke from Birmingham, and I'm a unicorns and rainbows. We're not. We've really come from very different. He likes football, the lads, computer games. I'm all into my spirituality, fluffy. We're not alike in many, many areas. But it really, as I said, I think my biggest thing is I am very, very clear that I I love Russ, and I continue to come back to, I love this man. So what do I do from that place? What do I do?
Okay, so let me give you an example. For example, if it's there's a family occasion. Let's say you have a family occasion and you want to go to it, and for some reason he's got something else that he wants to do, or he doesn't want to go to it, and you really want him to come with you. As far as I can see, what the compromise thing is about, you have to give in to some things, and you have to do some things that are not what would be your first choice of things to do. And so you have to, there has to be give and take in that way. But my but like you say, that does sound like you're not, it sounds like you have to um not be your complete whole self all the time, right?
Mm,
You have to, compromising sounds like you're putting aside some of yourself. I think that's why it sounds like being
yeah,
pushed down,
yeah.
because you're not being your whole true self all of the time. You're having to do what he wants to do some of the time, or you're having to do or he's having to do what you want to do some of the time, for example. How does that look to you? How do you deal with that?
So what that looks like to me is the thing that I will not compromise on is my love for him. Won't compromise on that. So that means that he does not have to do or be or say anything to earn that love. So if I want to go to a family thing, that bit's my business. I want to go to it. And I can absolutely say to him, to us, oh, I really want to go to this. I'd love it if you want to come too. And if he says, the football match on at that time, I'm going to watch the football. I'm not compromising on how much I love him. I want him to be doing what he wants to be doing. I don't want him to be doing, what I want, my biggest want is for him to be doing what he wants to do. So if that is genuinely what he wants to do, then I don't want him to come with me. Because that's what I won't compromise on.
Yeah.
And so I know I don't need anyone's validation. I don't need anybody up by my side. I don't need any of that. I'm very, I know who I am. I know how to show up for these things. It's absolutely brilliant. I'll go and have an amazing time.
Right.
And love that he's watching the football at home.
Yeah. And if he's making that choice, that doesn't mean to you, oh, he doesn't love me enough, he doesn't value me enough, he doesn't, right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And sometimes my head can suggest those things to me. And then again, I go back to, what do I understand? What feeling, if I have the thought, Russ doesn't love me, what does that feel like? It feels horrible. And so it's kind of like the information here, when something like that comes with a really horrible feeling, I can see that what that is saying is, you've gone off somewhere. And even just say Russ had fallen out of love with me. Just say Russ didn't want to be with me anymore. And so I have the thought he doesn't love me. And that bit is actually true. What the off feeling is coming, what is built into Russ doesn't love me, there is, so I'm not good enough, or so I'm not whole and complete. There is something hidden in there that I'm not noticing. And so that's why our feelings are so key, because what my feeling is telling me is that there's something hidden in there that I'm not seeing, and this bad feeling, it is giving me information not to take any notice of that. And then at some point when I self-write, I can see, do you know what? If Russ genuinely doesn't want to be with me, then I don't want him to be with me either, because that's how much I love him. If he really, really doesn't want to be with me, I'm going to help him pack and find somewhere else to be, because and it's really, really strange. This was part of the conversation that I was actually having with my son today. The less we hold on to somebody, what I can see is, the more that I am like that, Russ comes to much more of those family occasions and those kinds of things with
Yeah.
me, because there is zero pressure on him to do that. And he's like, oh yeah, there's football on, oh, which would I rather do? And actually hanging out with me when I'm in a good mood, when I'm, you know, when I just love him and my non-compromise is my love for him, I actually beat the football quite a lot of the times these
Yeah.
days. Well, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
It
totally.
has to be, that's not a, it's not a plan and an idea. That is a genuine, again, when I say I walk my talk, it's like, okay, if I genuinely love Russ, what do I want?
Mm.
And I have grown into that. I know that's how relationships work. I know that's how, and so, you know, that's been my growing into the seeing of that. And the more that I do that, the rewards and the love and the gorgeousness that comes from that is just unbelievable.
Right, right. And so how do you try to have fun together, or does that just come naturally?
It just comes naturally. We laugh a lot. Yeah, we're just, yeah, we have fun. We're actually, we've built, we have bought a plot of land with an agricultural barn on it, and we are we're going to live in a caravan on this plot of land and build this house. And you know, I've been walking around in thick mud and pulling weeds down and clearing this, you know, we've been there together doing this, and it has been, we have laughed so much, mostly him laughing, to be fair, when I face plant in the mud. Yeah, so I think when you just, there's a beautiful thing, and I don't know, you know, wherever you listen, I think you can just Google it. There's it's a blog, it's a piece of writing that somebody did called, I think it's something like Choose Her Every Day. I don't know, have you heard of that, Anne?
I'm not
It's
sure.
it's definitely worth Googling and listen to.
Oh,
And it's just
okay.
the description of a relationship, how a relationship broke down. And I can see it's kind of like, I deliberately choose Russ every day. And
Right,
it's like, as I choose him, he can't help but choose me because I'm choosing him. And that really strengthens our relationship. It's well worth, just Google it, Choose Her
yeah,
Every Day, I think it's called. And it's well worth just a read. You can,
right, right. Okay,
it's online somewhere. And you know, if you can't find it, find me and I'll send it to you.
okay, okay. And what about intimacy? I presume that in your
Oh yes.
original
Sorry. Okay. Oops.
okay, so okay, I presume in your original marriage that was not so great, but I don't know. Who knows?
I mean, there were definitely times when it wasn't bad. There were equally times when I was forced to do things that
Yeah,
I potentially wouldn't have wanted to do. I can't say it was all bad. It wasn't, but it wasn't my most favorite thing. And yet, what I can see with between Russ and I is we are incredibly intimate in many ways.
yeah,
Yeah, just that it's not just sex. You know, we absolutely enjoy each other in that way, but equally we touch each other a lot, like, you know, hands, face, just the way we talk to each other, our pet names for each other, the way that we just touch each other as we walk past each other, the way we look. You know, sometimes we're at a table at something and he's over the other side, and you know, we just kind of look at each other. So there is a lot of intimacy, that sort of intimacy, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's really something that um, in all my training, original training as a sexual therapist, that all of that didn't come into it. It was about relationships, and but there was no understanding of where feelings came in, or of unconditional love that you've been talking
Mm.
about, that you're choosing love first, and you're choosing um whatever that. And when you say that you're choosing whatever makes him happy, it's not the same as doing things to make him happy, right?
Oh, no,
Because
no, no.
that's, yeah, because you spoke about that. That's what I used to do in my
Yes.
first marriage and in my first relationships. I was forever trying to make them happy and doing
Yeah.
whatever I could to make them happy, thinking that that's what would make them love me, and rather than doing it because of unconditional love. And there's a different thing, isn't it? That's
It's a very, very different thing. And there are some subtleties in there that you kind of, again, this comes back to experience, playing around with this and seeing, having those, oh my gosh, yeah, this is really, really different. Because before it would be, I will do something for you so that
Mm,
I can, and even if you don't mean to, it's kind of like, if I do this, the unspoken agreement is you're going to love me, you're going to validate me back in some way. Now I am clear, I am choosing Russ, and I am whole and complete. I am perfect on my own. I totally love myself, and I am okay, whatever. And so an overflow of the love that I have for myself is I choose to give some of that love, a lot of that love, to Russ. And what happens from that space of, you don't need to do anything, you don't need to earn that love, you don't need to do anything. And it's from that space of not needing that. Neediness is one of it's just horrendous. It's that it kills relationships. um so filling my own cup, from realizing, if I want to feel love, if I want to feel loved, then it's my job to love me. And when I do that job really, really well, Russ cannot help but join in. It's kind of, that's how it works. When I put that onto him, he wants to run a mile. But when I'm doing it, so everything, the principles, one of the things is like, life works the opposite way to the way it looks. And it kind of does look like, oh, I need you to love me. That's what makes sense. That's how we're told a lot. That's
mm,
how I thought it worked. But when I tried that, and trust me, as I said, I tried that for over 20 years, and it just got worse and worse and worse. When I'm in a space of, I absolutely love myself, and then sometimes I'm sat there and just this love that is just within me, and I look at Russ, and so I just tell him, oh my gosh, I just love you so much, I have so much love. And then he just bursts out laughing, we do something nice, whatever, it just, the whole thing. Whereas if I'm sitting there kind of feeling a little bit unloved and what have you, and I'm like, right, Russ, you need to mind read that right now, I need you to tell me you love me. You're onto a loser. It's not, the energetically, this is very much, I don't know, vibration, energy, level of consciousness, whatever your words on it. But which is why a lot of the work that I do is around self-love, because the more that we are in touch with ourselves and who we are, and when we are just like little bundle balls of love, people can't help but love you.
so tell us about this little mini course that you're offering, that you're giving as a gift, about the loving yourself.
Yes, so that is 30 days of self-love.
Okay.
And it is just like 30 blogs, I guess, about this kind of thing, about invitations to experience some of these things and to play with these things. It's not, you have to do it this way. And everything that I've shared, it's not like, oh, copy me and do exactly what I do. It is, feel into it yourself. And so this is 30 days of little things to play around with, and talking about, again, as I've said here, that it works the opposite way, that actually it's really important to be clear that it's your job to love yourself, because once you do that, the love that you're looking for on the outside it can't help but be there when you're truly loving yourself. So yeah, it's 30 or 30 like little blogs, 30 days of something to play with, look at, read, contemplate, whatever.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so it's been wonderful talking to you, and I'm sure we will have another discussion about this.
Oh, I hope. One of my favorite subjects. I just love the whole, having completely turned all of my relationships
Yeah,
around it, my three of my three children, and building beautiful relationships with my grandchildren. It's something that is very, very dear to my heart. So, and thank you. I've loved it.
Thank you very much for the gift. I will put a link to that for people as well, so that they can
Thank you.
get that. And yeah, so thank you very much for today, and we will speak again very soon.
I hope so. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me turn that